Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder when I drop my kid off at school and deliver an episode to you while I walk home. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good morning, listeners. It is a blustery Wednesday morning here in suburban Chicago. I recorded an episode for you yesterday at the beginning of this snowstorm, and apparently when I put my phone in my pocket, the microphone came untugged. That's the second time in a month that's happened, and it's very frustrating. But it means that you get a second crack at this episode, which means I will be much more refined and erudite and thoughtful and entertaining and etc., etc. So it is mid-20s Fahrenheit today, and it's snowing, frankly, in a pretty picturesque way. I like it a lot. It looks really nice. I'm not going to enjoy shoveling, although honestly, there's enough snow coming down. It might be the first time in this year that I get out the old snowblower, that's always kind of fun, even if it's a lot of work. For the second time, I'm happy to be speaking to you today about games I've played recently. Over the weekend, I went to a local game convention. It's just a tiny little thing hosted by the local high school. It's called Lyoncon, LyonCon. Lyons High School is the one that's near us. And I went to this event without really having too much in mind, but excited to see all the games that people brought and excited to teach games and play games. I think next year I'm just going to go as an attendee because there were other people there who had volunteered to help teach, and so they didn't really need me to do that, and I do enough of that at my own game stuff. So next year I think I'm just going to go and have fun. So we went for one day. We had a great day playing games, did lots of fun stuff, and I enjoyed playing 3 new games that I'd never played before. Hence today's episode, Shootin' from the Hip Triple Shot. For those of you new to the podcast, Shootin' from the Hip is my segment in which I talk about an early play of a game that I've played for the first time. Maybe I've played it once or twice, but generally I haven't played it enough to do a more thorough discussion of it. And basically what you're hearing are first impressions, even if they sound sort of robust. Sometimes I make snap judgments, but generally, Shootin' from the Hip episodes, I'm talking about games I've only played once, maybe twice. So today I'm going to talk about 3 games for you. The first of these is Drop It. Drop It was described to me by the person teaching it as Connect 4 for grown-ups. We were playing it with kids, and I would say it is a good game to play with children because it's accessible and easy for them to play, even if they aren't going to do very well. But there's enough interesting stuff going on that it's not boring for adults. So the setup of the game has this sort of vertical plastic sleeve that looks a little bit like a Connect 4 apparatus, except it's not divided into columns. It's one large pocket, relatively thin, but wide. You have a couple different scoring scenarios you can set up. The one we used focused on color, and so along the sides of the plastic dropping area were bands of colors that sort of rotated among the 4 player colors, and along the bottom was a band of color that rotated among the colors of the player colors. You have a variety. I think you have 9 shapes, a couple discs, a couple triangles, a couple squares, and the idea is, and a diamond, I think. The idea is on your turn you're going to drop a shape into the sleeve, and your goal is to have it land and not be touching either another shape of the same shape or another piece of the same color or one of the areas on the side of its color. And then the plastic sleeve has these lines on it and these dots on it that indicate various scoring areas depending. You score the sort of the highest amount that you're touching. So that's the basic way that you play. You take turns. There is a mechanism where if you screw up, you have these joker tiles that you can play to score even though you screwed up. The guy who owned the game didn't know what those were for and hadn't looked. I think the game would have been very different, especially for some of the younger players who scored almost nothing, if they'd gotten to have 2 times when they could say, well, I'm going to score this anyway. So if I ever play it again, I'm certainly using those. But yeah, it was okay. Not a game I would go out of my way to play, but, if I see it on a shelf at a game club and there's little kids looking for a game, it would be a great one to show them because it's easy to play, easy to teach, and relatively fun. So that's Drop It. I want to say that's from Cosmos, but I'm just guessing at that, so who knows. All right, the second game I want to talk about today, the second new game I played was Azul, Stained Glass of Sintra. Now, Azul is it's a trilogy right now, 3 different games set around the idea of drafting and playing tiles in various ways. My family is a big fan of the original Azul. We played it quite a bit. And I recently got Azul Summer Pavilion, which I haven't talked about yet on the podcast, I don't think, but I will be talking about it soon. So, Summer Pavilion is the third game. We kind of skipped over the second game, but I saw they had it in the game library, and I took a minute to skim the rules, and then we got started. It's called, like I said, it's called Azul Summer Stained Glasses of Sintra. And in this one, instead of placing sort of bakelite, hard, almost ceramic-like tiles on a board, you're placing these sort of clear, translucent colored tiles that look like sort of tiles of glass. Like if you were a mosaic artist and you bought some glass tiles, this is what they would look like. It uses the same basic action as the first Azul and the third, which is where you have a series of discs on the table that are called factories, and on your turn you take some tiles from the factory. All the tiles are the same color, and then you discard the other ones into the middle, and the middle becomes an area you can draw from. And then when you play, you're placing your pieces onto this board, which is divided up into vertical columns. In the previous Azul, you would decide which columns you were going to place in based on how many tiles you had, and then you would get to put one tile into the main board at the end of the round, and you'd score points. In this Azul, you decide which column you're going to place your tiles in, and you actually place them right away. And then when you fill up a column, then you score based on how many other columns you have filled up and a couple other things. The tricky part is that you have this little meeple at the top. They call it a glazier, which is a person who makes glass or puts in glass. And it's at the top of one of these columns. When you take tiles, you have to put them either in the column that the glazier pawn is on or any column to the right of that. But you're not allowed to go to its left. And then when you put them in a column to its right, you move it over to that column. So as the round goes on, you're moving it further and further to the right until eventually, instead of drawing tiles, you take one turn to just move your glazier all the way back to the left. When you finish a column, you score it, and then you flip it over. And when you finish the column the second time, you remove that column from the game. So over time, you sort of fill up your scoring area and you get more and more points, which is true of the regular Azul as well, and Azul Summer Pavilion. I thought it was okay. I probably would have liked it a lot if I'd never played either of the other Azul games, but I think it's definitely the weakest of the three. And I still don't have my mind made up about whether our collection needs both the original Azul and Azul Summer Pavilion, but I'm pretty sure we don't need this new game I played. So that's Azul, Stained Glass of Sintra from Next Move Games, and it's Michael Kiesling. So my third game that I wanted to mention is called Obcurio. Obcurio is from the same publisher that made Mysterium, and it seems as though they have, like Next Move with Azul, are trying to figure out how to go back to that well and play with the mechanisms again in a slightly different way. If you haven't played Mysterium, it's a co-op game where one person is a ghost giving clues to a bunch of psychics about things that happened in the past, and the clues come in the form of these sort of abstract, surrealistic art in the style of the game Dixit, which I think is also from this company, but I can't confirm that. But the idea is you're supposed to try to interpret the messages being given to you by the ghost. That's in Mysterium. In Obcurio, it's the same basic setup. You have a group of people who are on a team. You have one person giving clues to them. But the way those clues are given and the way the team works have changed dramatically. For one, there's now a traitor on the team. There's one person who wants the team to lose. And of course, that's secret. And part of your goal as a non-trader is to figure out who the trader is, so you can point them out if you get to the point where you have to. The way that the ghosts give clues, or it's not a ghost now, it's a book somehow, is a little bit more complicated. In Mysterium, you just drew a hand of 7 cards, and you gave out cards to indicate the clues. In this game, as the book, you draw 2 cards and put them in this little holder thing that I think is magnetized, and you get these 2 little pointers. And you put the pointers on the pictures, either next to the picture to indicate the whole thing, or you leave it off to indicate nothing about the clue, or you put it on the picture and point to something specific in the picture. So once you've done that as the book, you've pointed to 2 things in these pictures, then everybody closes their eyes and the trader opens theirs. Then the trader, using the clues you've given, picks 2 cards out of an array of 8 with the idea of misleading us. Because there's a 3rd card, which is hidden, that the book saw and no one else did. That's our goal. So when the book was planting their clues, they're trying to point us toward this 1 card that is their goal. Meanwhile, the trader adds 2 more cards that they think we will be misled into picking because of the clues. And then we draw 3 more cards, so there's a random set of 6. Then the group discusses, and the longer you discuss, the harder the game gets, because you get these penalties for the next round based on how many times you flip the timer over. And at some point, people start moving their pieces into these spots that indicate which card they're picking. Once everyone has picked a card, then the book reveals whether we found the right card or not, and we lose 1 of our life tokens for every card that we took that was wrong. If you got it right, you move on. There's 6 rounds, so you have to get it right 6 times. If at some point the team screws up enough that the life tokens get down pretty low, I don't remember exactly how many, but it's pretty low, then there's a vote. The group has a discussion, and then on a count of 3, they all vote and pick the person they think is the trader. If they select the trader, then that trader is out, and the group tries to win the rest of the game without the trader interfering in the discussion. I think the trader still gets to pick the pictures, though. I don't remember. On the other hand, if the group votes and they're wrong, then the proper member is out, and the group loses 2 of its remaining life tokens. I think when we started this process, there were only 5 left. And then we had to vote again. So then we voted again, and we did not find the trader the second time either. And then we lost the game. Because you have to keep voting until you find the trader. And we just didn't have enough tokens. So that's kind of how the game works. It's interesting. I can't decide for certain if I like it better than Mysterium. Mysterium is a delightful game. It's got some ups and downs. It's got some kind of wonky rules. I think the same is true of Obcurio. I think I enjoy Mysterium a little better because there's more room for interpretation of things, whereas it seems like the interpretation is a little more limited on Obcurio. And I like the full co-op. Games with traders, unless the game is specifically about being a trader, like in The Resistance, where all you're trying to do is find out who the trader is. I'm less interested in a game where it's co-op, but there might be somebody, or there is somebody undermining us. Like Dead of Winter, that's the part about it that I like the least. So from that perspective, that part of it's not my favorite. The pictures are good, but they are a little smaller, which is not as good. We were playing on a big table, so I couldn't see them as well. That's on me, I guess. The components are all very nice. In fact, I'd say they're a little better. Although Mysterium does have those big globy player markers that are like crystal balls, and I like those better than Obcurio comes with these little, really solid, but just poker chips to mark your character. I feel like the roleplay part of Mysterium is a bit more fun. I suppose people might roleplay Obcurio as well, but our group did not. Played it much more like a puzzle. The art design is more brown than blue. The art design in Mysterium is blue. I think ultimately I would put it in the category of it's fine. If you've never played Mysterium, it probably would be a revelation. If you've played Mysterium, it probably comes down to taste. Which of the two fits your interest in this kind of card game better? That said, I certainly am not driven to go buy it. But I would happily play it if someone got it out. So it's kind of a disappointing roundup, I suppose. My Shooting from the Hip triple shot came in at 3 games that are fine. Not amazing, not terrible, fine. But I'm curious to hear what you've been playing. It's late February, so we've got a top of the stack coming up. Are you on your way to finishing your top of the stack obligations? I have started tracking another thing recently because I didn't have enough to track, called 52 games. And what it is it's 52 prompts that challenge you to play games of a variety of themes and features and goals. And so the idea is some of the games are things that, like one of the examples is a game that has inspired an idiom or a catchphrase. So some of them are very specific things like that. Other ones are like 3 games with similar themes. Or there's one where it's find an anagram in this game that points you to another game. And then play both of those games. The anagram and the game whose title you anagrammed, and the game whose title that anagram pointed toward. So lots of potential there, lots of amusing stuff going on. So I would love to hear what games you've been playing. Pop over to Board Game Geek Guild 3269 and let us know what you've been up to. In the meantime, I'm going to say adieu, and I want to say thank you for taking time to walk with me today. And I hope your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye. From Next Move Games and Wolfgang Warsch. So is it Wolfgang? No, it's Michael Kiesling. Sorry, both Michael and Wolfgang. It's Michael Kiesling. I know you're regular listeners, so I gotta be on my game. They're not. I'm joking. But I do value you, regular listener, who are listening to me talk about how much I value my listeners.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.